591,000 damage from an uncharged melee attack, with no skills, relics, or guns to help out. What you have witnessed is the perfect culmination of multiple developer oversights that when combined, gives you as close to infinite damage as this game allows. Not only can it reach damage numbers beyond any method previously seen, but it also lasts for more than a single hit. And it all stems from a small mistake that's been in the game possibly since the day it released. I'll start with the most important component of the setup, the Guts Melee Mutator. While its primary effect of increasing melee critical chance is nice, the level 10 upgrade causes you to gain 0.5% melee critical damage for every 1% of grey health. Interestingly, this mutator's effect doesn't list a maximum limit like others, which actually makes sense given that grey health already has a built-in maximum of 100% of the HP bar, limiting Guts to a maximum bonus of plus 50% melee critical damage. At least it's supposed to. Under the right conditions, players have the ability to generate grey health beyond the health bar's intended limit, such as by stacking grey health conversion above 100% and taking damage. Despite no visible grey health once healed to full, the Ring of the Damned, which increases damage while you have grey health, is still active. While somewhat interesting, it was mostly useless since previously you could only exceed the grey health limit by a small amount. Then came the Dark Horizon DLC, which provided not one, but two methods of generating infinite amounts of grey health. The first method involves using the Black Greatsword, or more specifically its weapon mod, Indomitable Strike. The effect states that while Indomitable is active, all damage taken is converted to grey health and you can't be staggered, essentially giving you a free Steadfast Mutator. Except that's not what the effect does. Steadfast works as advertised and leaves you with no grey health once fully healed, but try the same thing with Indomitable, and this time the Ring of the Damned is active. After using some external tools, I was able to find out that what Indomitable actually does is grant you 3 times the grey health you would have normally generated upon taking damage, minus a little due to the built-in 15% damage reduction. Also, unlike Steadfast, this grey health is boosted by grey health conversion, and using every increase possible stacks to an additional 180% grey health generated. Combined with Indomitable, and you gain a total of 8.4 times the original grey health generated upon taking damage. More important than this is the completely unlisted effect both Indomitable and Steadfast have, which is that while charging an attack, you cannot lose any pre-existing grey health, regardless of the number of hits taken, and this is the critical component to make an infinite generator work. To start, you need 2 specific items, the Necklace of Flowing Life and the Star Killer. I also recommend the Encrypted Ring and the Spirit Healer Mutator just to speed up the process. Shoot the mod at the ground, stand over it, and hold the charge attack until it explodes. With enough grey health generated, the weapon mod should instantly recharge, and you can repeat it over and over. Just make sure that you survive Gravity Call with at least 34% HP, because if you didn't know, it's possible to land critical hits on yourself. Using an optimal setup, each attempt causes you to generate 320% of the damage taken as grey health after healing back to full, which at high regen is almost instant. However, the method comes with significant risk if you get the math wrong, and being so involved makes it tedious for higher quantities of grey health. This brings me to the second generator, which while slower, comes with no risk of killing yourself, and can be set up to run entirely on its own. You see, the problem with grey health is that any type of healing replaces the grey health with red health, be it regen, lifesteal, skills, etc. Except for one. This is the Broken Heart, which states that it passively grants or removes 2 HP per second until you're at 50% HP. The healing part of it is specifically not treated as health regeneration, so instead of replacing grey health, it gets pushed forward along the bar as you heal, even past the health cap. Though you could use this to completely AFK generate grey health by holding the Anguish's attack, it would take hours before you get anything useful this way. Thankfully, the Broken Heart provides a second, more effective option through its on-use effect, setting HP to exactly 50%. Again, not a heal, so not only is grey health not removed, you also get more red health for converting. This effect can be exploited by equipping both the Emergency Switch and Conservation Seal, which both provide an additive 50% chance to not consume a relic while at half health, therefore giving infinite relic uses. Make sure not to have any other form of health regeneration though, otherwise you go above 50% and risk running out of relics. The final piece added in the DLC is the security half measure ring, which grants a small amount of shield upon relic use, and will convert 15% red health to grey, which the Broken Heart replenishes in order to keep using it. Though it is unaffected by grey health conversion, you can instead increase consumable use speed, which can drop it from the default relic use speed of roughly 2.5 seconds all the way down to around 1 second. And you can easily set up something like an auto hotkey script to automate the process for the higher damage multipliers. I'll include a copy of my script in the comments if anyone wants to use it. Both methods work well as is, but there is one additional trick that makes them more effective. You start by maximizing your total HP, which is done by getting the Vigor trait to 10, equipping the Empress and Dead King rings in the unused ring slots, using all possible health boosting fragments on yourself and your prism, along with getting the gigantic legendary trait. Lastly, drink a Mudtooth's tonic. If you have the scrap to spare, you can also try rolling Mudtooth's snake oil to try and get the Dark Cider for the relic method, or Sacred Lake Water for the Greatsword method. You could also try getting lucky with the All-Seeing Eye for an additional 15% HP, but it is absolutely not worth the effort of doing due to the inability to refresh it before it expires, paired with the short duration. From here, start using the grey health generator of your choice, and once you're done, get rid of every health boost. You see, lowering your max HP does not affect your total amount of grey health, and since Guts only cares about the amount of grey health as a percentage of health, this effectively triples your damage output on critical hit. You can even equip the burn of the Mesmer to go down to a max HP of 80, effectively making your Guts bonus an additional 20% stronger. For ease of understanding, I've set up a few spreadsheets with different calculators based on your known factor. The link to these will also be in the comments, but to give an idea of how strong this exploit is, if we were to use the relic method with an optimized setup for only 5 minutes, you end up with a Guts multiplier of 85 times your base damage on critical hit. You do it for a few hours, that's how you get damage numbers like I showed in the first clip. Now before you go trying it out, I'll quickly share some notes I made while testing. Grey health will reset on resting or exiting the game, even if you have equipment that specifically states grey health can't be removed. It does persist through doors though, so the optimal time to use it is right at the start of the adventure and never resting afterwards. Taking red health damage with no visible grey health can still cause all accumulated grey health to be removed. You'll either want Warden's Shield Drone for protection or play very carefully. Melee weapon choice does not matter as long as it has the Guts Mutator. You can also freely swap it to another weapon like the Huntress Spear if you need to fight something outside normal melee range. Unfortunately, the damage bonus only applies to attacks from the weapon itself, so things like Ring of Spears and Heavy Flops don't get the bonus. Weirdly, the Red Doze Staff skill is also excluded despite similar attacks working with Guts properly. You can freely set up either grey health generator in Boss Rush without enemies spawning, so long as you don't move forward in the level too much. However, upon defeating a boss, all current grey health gets removed. Gear like Hangsman's Noose does not stop it. Using the generators guarantees a win given enough time, but it's probably faster to just play normally and it's more fun. And now for the final and arguably most interesting question, what is the maximum damage possible with this exploit? The answer depends on one major factor, the numeric data type chosen by the developers to represent damage. For anyone unfamiliar with software development, computer code has these things called variables that are used to store data. There are a number of different types used to store numeric data, but when dealing with whole numbers like Remnant 2's damage displays, the most commonly used one is known as an integer, which can store a max value of 1 less than 2 to the power of 31, which is roughly 2.1 billion. If the damage dealt is also of the type, going over that amount should cause an integer overflow, where the computer loops the number around to the lowest value it can possibly store, and then continuing from there. In theory, if you did an attack that goes above this limit, we can expect that the attack will either do 0 damage, negative damage, or if damage is not also an integer, it's possible the display will instead show some type of default text. With the current build on screen for maxing out melee damage paired with this optimized prism setup I made, I can achieve a base damage of 8043 on weak spot hit prior to criticals. Checking with the calculator, it would require 42 million grey health to reach my desired output, and by using the relic method it would take 11 days of consecutive relic use, and I could legitimately do that if I wanted to. Clearly, I do not, but I do still want to provide an answer. After looking into a number of options between hacking and modding the game, though I would love to learn how to make a mod, the simplest way to speed this up was to modify a prism fusion to give me ridiculous grey health conversion and max health. I spend 6 minutes building up to 50 million grey health just to be certain I get it, switch to the damage build, and have to hope for a critical. Well, if you guessed show default text, seems like you're a winner. But this footage goes on to show something really strange. I guess this first worm I deal 337 million damage with a javelin, then I throw the next one aiming for the second worm's weak spot. With my current weak spot multipliers, this attack should only do 1.3 billion damage, yet it also says resist. Then later on, I do the same attack after Juggernaut wears off, and land an attack that displays 1.05 billion damage. There is only one reasonable value between those two that the maximum damage can be, and that is 2 to the power of 30, exactly half the max size of an integer. This is not a common practice, so I assume what has happened is that the code looks something like this, and the developers just made a typo in the equation here. It doesn't really matter since you're never meant to do this much damage anyway, but it means that officially, the maximum damage number possible by players is 1,073,741,823. Even so, that value is tiny compared to the maximum damage the Guts Mutator allows you to reach. I'll have to save that for another video since the explanation essentially requires giving a short class on how software data types work, and this video is long enough as it is. To give you an idea though, if the multiplier was a damage value, it would one-shot most Apocalypse bosses. I would recommend having fun with it while it lasts, because this is not the kind of exploit that gets ignored for long. Nothing else to really say, it's just absurdly strong. I make a habit of finding obscure and unorthodox knowledge like this, so feel free to visit again if you want to see more from my collection. I'm not sure what to work on next, but well, that's interesting.